The live stream now. Oh, I gotta turn the light. Hold on. That's the problem. That's a little better. Okay, I will now call to order the study session meeting of August 17th, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically, and members of council are participating remotely pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Malika.
Here.
Councilmember Escobar.
Here.
Great. So we have 4 items on our agenda tonight. We will get started with the 2020 legislative session year in review. So the city's lobbying team, Ed Bowditch and Jennifer Cassell. How do you say that, Jennifer? Oh, you're muted.
I apologize. Thank you. It's Castle.
Castle, okay.
Yeah.
So welcome, Ed and Jennifer, to debrief the 2020 legislative session.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having us. On behalf of Ed and I'd like to say that it has been a pleasure working with the city of Northglenn. We very much appreciate the opportunity and very much enjoy representing the city. So thank you. So as you all probably can imagine, the 2020 legislative session was a little bit different this year, as a lot of things were. The legislature kicked off at the beginning of January, and they were plugging away until about mid-March when everything hit, and they decided to take a recess. So about March 14, the legislature took a recess. They then reconvened in the middle of May, and then finally adjourned June 15. So they did have a little bit of a break in there. You know, the 2020 legislature, it was still under Democratic control. The Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate, as well as the governor's office. So we expected to see a lot of Democratic priorities take center stage during the session. And in fact, that's a lot of what happened. The session started off really with a focus on a variety of different issues, but the legislature was very pro-consumer, very pro-renters' rights, pro-environment, pro-local government. And so we expected to see a lot of those of legislation that correlated with those issues. We did also expect to see a lot regarding healthcare and transportation issues. So Ed and I did provide a legislative summary. We'll hit some of the highlights in here. I will give a little bit of the legislative overview, and then Ed can take over and talk about the budget. And please feel free to interrupt us if you have any questions as we move along. So as soon as the legislature reconvened in late May, it became very obvious that the legislature had different priorities, and rightfully so. We had a big budget deficit, we were dealing with a pandemic, et cetera. So the priorities shifted. So a lot of the Democratic priorities that we thought were going to be the priorities of the session did change. So law enforcement and criminal justice, public safety came to the forefront. And we saw a fairly substantial law enforcement reform bill, Senate Bill 217, that did pass, that the city did. We did review this bill, discussed some positions with CML, the police chiefs, et cetera. So that was a big piece of legislation that was introduced. I believe Colorado was the first state that passed police reform after some police issues came to light nationally. I did mention healthcare Healthcare Human Services was at the forefront. We saw repeated battles at the Capitol this session. Vaccinations, tightening up vaccinations was one. That bill did in fact pass. A paid family leave program. This, I believe, was the 6th year in a row that the legislature tried to pass a paid family leave that did not make it across the finish line, nor did a public option. So those were essentially some of the main healthcare bills that we did see. And I will also note that I think I mentioned before, the environment was an important topic to a lot of legislators during the session. Really, not many pro-environment bills passed at all during the session as well, too. I can say the same thing about some gun safety measures. Safe storage, that did not pass. And I will say some of these bills that we're discussing were brought forth by Northglenn legislators. So it was pending on the perspective. Unfortunately or fortunately, these bills did not pass. Transportation. This has been a hot topic down at the Capitol for years, mainly trying to find a solution for funding for transportation. There was no major piece of legislation that would have changed the way that the state funds transportation. We've seen multiple ballot measures. We've seen multiple bills that have been passed that have not passed over the years, and I think the legislature lost somewhat of an appetite as it related to transportation funding. There was an interesting bill that was introduced, and unfortunately it was scaled back a little bit, but it had to do with accountability and transparency of RTD. That bill was scaled back, but a bill did pass that created an accountability committee for RTD, and happy to report one of our council members is sitting on that committee. So hopefully we can try to start plugging away at RTD a little bit and how it can benefit the North Corridor in the city. Other than that, the other kind of theme that we saw, and as I mentioned, Ed's going to go a little bit into the fiscal policy and the budget of the session. But after a few years of some struggles with the Gallagher Amendment, we did see the passage of a proposal to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. That is going to be on the ballot. Since it was a referendum, that'll be on the ballot for the voters' vote in November. There was also a bill that will also be on the ballot, again, another referendum, and this is to increase the nicotine tax, tobacco and nicotine tax. It also introduces a tax on vaping products. So I know something that the city did track very heavily. So this again will be on the ballot. The city does stand to benefit from this should it pass. You will get increased sales tax collections from this measure. And with that, hopefully I didn't run through legislative issues too quickly. I will certainly pass it over to Ed to talk about the budget, unless, Madam Mayor, you had any questions on that before we proceed.
I wasn't sure. Does anyone on council have questions? No? Okay, thank you. Oh, Councilmember Brown.
Sorry, I had to find my question first. When you were talking about the Family Leave Act, you mentioned private, and I'm not quite sure what that means. You know, that it was shot down. It was shot down, and then you said something about even if it's private. Was there an opportunity for private companies to allow that? Is that what that was?
Oh, I apologize. I don't remember saying the word private. This would have directly impacted private business. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. You bet you, Councilwoman. And I will say, when the legislature did reconvene, they decided not to push paid family leave, but they did end up pushing paid sick leave. So employers are now required to offer a certain number of paid sick leave hours.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on for a brief summary of the budget. Colorado's general fund is dependent on income tax and sales tax. And obviously when the coronavirus economic pandemic hit, People lost their jobs. They stopped buying things. So the state was facing a $3.3 billion shortfall, and that's on a general fund base of $12 billion. So they had about 6 weeks to balance the budget. They took roughly $700 million from K-12 education. They took about half the state support for higher education. That was a $500 million cut. For both K-12 and higher education, they did provide some of the COVID relief funds that we received from the federal government, though we're not allowed to say those are an offset. But the school districts and the colleges can use those funds to pay for some of the expenses incurred. They took away all the state money, the state general fund that was going to transportation, and they reduced the state's reserve by about $1 billion. They cut every program they could: child welfare, family support programs, marketing, tourism, elimination of almost all capital spending. They also suspended a $250 million balloon payment that they were supposed to make to the Public Employees Retirement Association. What this means is that the state is going to have a very challenging time in future years. So fiscal year 21-22 might even be worse than the current year, because they used every, for lack of a better term, every trick in the book they could: reducing the reserve, moving cash funds into the general fund, eliminating some programs. It's going to be even harder for the legislature to balance the budget next year, depending on how quickly the state's economy starts inching back. We will get the next snapshot of the state's economy in late September, when they get the next quarterly revenue estimate. What I'd like to think that a few more people are going back to work. I know we're just we're at the mercy of the pandemic, and we'll just have to see how long that lasts. That's about it. So again, watch for a very challenging fiscal year 21-22 budget. Any questions?
Can I ask a question, Ed, about the budget? So that doesn't sound great at all. I know this is a hypothetical question, because I'm afraid of the answer. So hypothetically, if the Gallagher Amendment passes, how, or if it fails, either way, I mean, can you speak to the impact of that based on our current situation?
Sure. That's a very good question. So the Gallagher Amendment controls local property taxes. So there's no direct collection by the state of local property taxes, except as it relates to school finance. If the Gallagher Amendment is unchanged, if the measure to repeal Gallagher does not pass, so Gallagher stays the same, the residential assessment rate, that share of your house on which you pay taxes, is projected to constrict even further next spring. So that means voters will be paying less and less of a share of taxes on their residential property. If Gallagher, and that is expected to drop local tax collections to school districts by $250 million. Now, if Gallagher is repealed, there's no increase in taxes. You just continue to pay the same share of your house as the taxes applied to that same share of your house. So there's no increase in taxes. It's just that the state doesn't have to come up with an additional $250 million just to keep K-12 flat. So the Gallagher repeal issue is really about maintaining that $250 million and maintaining, in effect, the tax rates where they are.
So I saw a presentation last week where they talked about the total impact was $900 million, and so the school impact was $450. Is that accurate? Was that just more extreme?
I'm sorry. That may be a speculation or an estimate at this point.
Okay.
The last material we've seen from the state economist was 250 million.
Okay.
Now that was an estimate back in January, so that will get modified, as we get further tax measures and tax values and all those things that are calculated.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question for Ed or Jennifer? No?
I just might say in closing that for the 2021 legislative session, so we have the election in 2020, we don't expect that the composition of the House or the Senate will flip party control. So we do expect that the Democrats will control the majority, both the House and the Senate, and that we will likely see some of those Democratic priorities that were either not introduced in the 2020 session or were introduced but did not pass during the 2020 session will come back again in 2021. So that's a little bit of a projection for what we expect to take place for next session.
Okay. Well, I thank you both for being here. I think that was all we had. It was nice to see you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, we appreciate it. And it's been great working with the legislative committee members.
And look forward to seeing everybody in person.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving into our second item, Northglenn COVID testing site. And so we have Rupa here with a presentation. I'm just going to pull that up for you. Welcome, Rupa. How are you?
Good. How are you guys, Mayor and City Council? I am super excited to be here tonight to bring to you our Northglenn testing site proposal for your approval tonight. And also on the line, we have Megan with Tri-County Health Department, who's been a key member of the Adams County Response and Recovery Team on mobile testing sites. And also Jessica Holtz, who you'll get a chance to meet at the end. She is our new COVID-19 community resource navigator, and she's been really instrumental in putting all the pieces together, including finding our testing site. So we can go ahead and get started with the next slide, if you don't mind, Mayor. So this is just to show you one of the metrics that the state looks at before Adams County can move into the Protect Our Neighbors phase. So this shows the 14-day incident rate per 100,000 for the past 14 days. And as of August 12th, that number was 150.2. So anything above 100, CDPHE defines as high. So on August 12th, it was 150.2. On August 17th, so today, that number dropped to 132.6. And if you want to go to the next slide. So here are some of the other locations for the mobile testing site or the community testing site locations in Adams County. There will be 2 new locations in Aurora and Brighton on Mondays and Tuesdays. So Aurora is either going to be on Monday or Tuesday, and Brighton will be on the other day. Westminster has a testing site on Thursdays, only for those without insurance. Commerce City has a similar site on Fridays. Thornton has one Tuesdays and Fridays. And there is, of course, that mass testing site that just opened last Monday at Waterworld. So as you can see from this list, the only day that's missing from a community testing site location is Wednesday. So that's why our proposal is to have a testing site on Wednesday. So for the location, we are just waiting on final paperwork from independent electrical contractors. They've been a great community partner in the past, so we're really, really excited that they've agreed to partner with us on this as well. And the star that you see on the map is that north parking lot where we're proposing the testing site B. And as you can see, it's close. It's really close to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the church, and their food bank. So as I mentioned, our location will be Wednesdays from 9 to 1 p.m. This will be a walk-up, so no appointments are necessary. This is the rapid results test. So folks will have results in 15 to 20 minutes. If they come by car, they can wait in their cars until the results are ready. If they arrive on foot, there'll be a special section that will be social distance where they can wait on site. Advanced urgent care is going to be administering the test, and Northglenn ambulance will also be on site as well in case there are any individuals experiencing homelessness that need to be transported to a quarantine location. This will be free to all individuals. It'll be open to the general public. And the capacity that advanced urgent care will be able to test is 100 tests per day. So for the personnel on site, there will be, advanced urgent care will have a physician assistant, and that PA will be able to go over any information to individuals, especially if they test positive on what they need to do in terms of quarantining and things like that. There also will be 2 medical assistants on site. They're going to be the ones that are actually administering the test. 3 customer safety ambassadors. So this is something that Adams County really recommended us do. So for all of their other mobile testing sites, I should say, they've been doing mobile testing for 10 weeks. So we've really looked to them to provide a lot of guidance on this. And our Northglenn testing site will just be another addition to Adams County's other mobile testing site locations. So it's a very similar setup. And these customer safety ambassadors are hired through a temp agency, but the good thing is that they've worked at all the other sites. So there's consistency in their messaging. They already have the knowledge on how to run these type of sites. And they'll be responsible for making sure that everybody's social distance, that they're checking in people as they come in, and they're providing a lot of administrative back work. Like I said, Northglenn ambulance will also be on site. And something else that's really exciting that Adams County Manager Ray Gonzalez has been instrumental in putting together is having an Adams County Human Services staffer on site. So one of the things that they found with their other mobile testing locations that they've been doing for the past 10 weeks is that a lot of folks, especially when they test positive, take that information hard. So it's good that they have somebody on staff that's there to kind of walk things through, but also that a lot of people that are coming to the testing site need help with other resources. So while they're waiting on getting their results, they can talk to the Adams County Human Services staff about other needs that they may have, including any rent resources, any food resources, childcare service needs, and things like that. And they'll have a packet of resources available. And also Jessica, as our community resource navigator, is also going to be putting together some information as well, just to provide that extra assistance while people are on site. And so how this is all going to be funded. So the cost for the city is $106,000, $106,740. And this is all CARES Act eligible. $85,500. That is to purchase 900 of the testing kits. And then the $3,240, that is to pay for the 3 community, the safety ambassadors. And then the $18,000 is the cost of, is the administrative cost for our mobile unit. So that's $2,000 per time that we're doing it. Since we're doing it 9 times, that's $18,000. So again, that total is $106,740. And with that, I do want to turn it over to Jessica Holtz, our COVID-19 Community Resource Navigator, if she wants to introduce herself.
Hi, Jessica. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. I think Ruba did a really great job. We've just been putting all the pieces together, and working with Ray Gonzalez has been really nice because he's offered a lot of guidance as they have set up these testing sites in other areas already.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on board.
Yeah,
I do see a question from Councilmember Brown.
Doesn't that just make you laugh every time you have to see it? I didn't have paper today, so I've written it on my hand. I would take it that this site is not going to be just for Northglenn residents. This will be open to anybody in Adams County.
That's correct.
And what drove you to 900 rapid tests? What did you base that on?
I'll defer to Ruba.
Sure. So Adams County decided that they're going to do this for 9 weeks. And a lot of other mobile testing sites, they're seeing capacity actually a little under 100, and Megan has some more of those numbers. But we feel like with the hours from 9 to 1, that 100 testing capacity should be adequate.
Okay, so I mean, to me, it's so relatively cheap. I just wanted to make sure that we had enough, Who is testing on the weekends? Is it just advanced? Is it advanced urgent care that's doing it?
So on the weekends,
Jessica, if you know as well, go ahead. On the weekends, there's actually not too many sites. It's mostly primary care and or urgent cares that test on the weekends. And so a lot of times those do come with a cost, or they do bill insurance, which is great. It's always good to check and know before you go, and ask if there's any fees for the medical visit or lab fees and all of that. They shouldn't be charging for anything, but we have seen some sites that do end up charging for a fee, or people ending up with a bill at the end through their insurance. So we always just let people know to go ahead and give a call first and check and make sure they're not going to get charged. Again, that is for folks who do have insurance in most cases. And advanced urgent care, though, does bill the CARES Act dollars for anyone who is uninsured, which is good. Just double checking to make sure there aren't any other associated fees with the visit.
Just another half question and just a comment. We spent a lot of time over the last 3 days trying to find someone who could test. And we ended up going for a rapid test on my daughter. She did it. I didn't do a darn thing. And it took 4 hours. So how do we know that this is really going to only take 10 minutes? Because that's what they told us when she made the appointment, that it'd only be 10 minutes. And then it took 4 hours to get the call back. And if we're going to have them sitting in their car, I want to make sure that we have an adequate plan to keep them cool.
And I'll defer that answer to Megan as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There have been delays at other sites that we've seen with some of these rapid tests. It does take time, depending on what their workflow looks like, to collect the information on the registration form, to run the test. If they're going to do an appointment with the provider on site, that can also that obviously adds to the time that folks are kind of being processed through that workflow. For these sites, what we have set up at both the Westminster and Commerce City site locations currently, that workflow it's typically under 40 minutes. I would say 40 minutes to an hour, just to not get folks' hopes up. It only takes about 10 minutes to process the test, but they do get a medical provider visit during that time. Most folks are sitting in their cars during that time as well, and so they are staying cool in the air conditioning. And we have some shaded tents for folks who are doing walk-ups. And so that would be consistent with this site as well.
Are we doing appointments? I'm sorry, Rupa.
No appointments.
No? Okay. Thank you for putting all your work into this. You girls did a great job. And thank you for answering all of my questions. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. So I have Councilmember Goff, and then Mullica, and then Councilmember Downing.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question was, I was hoping you could say a little bit more about what services or what kind of help or what's going to happen to a homeless person who comes in if they test positive, and if they don't, what happens to, what kind of resources or help are we giving to a person experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, so the Northglenn ambulance will be on site to transport that person experiencing homelessness to a quarantine location. And then from my understanding, I think Adams County is who's going to be following up with that person. But Megan, from your experience, if you have anything else to add to that.
I would say that does get a little complicated, because we do have several of our respite sites that are no longer taking folks or that have closed. We were using the Jeffco Respite Center, and then also the Aurora Emergency Respite Center. Jeffco has now closed, and then Aurora Emergency Respite Center is now on hold for taking new patients. And there's some regional conversations about where folks can safely quarantine. We have found with the 2 sites so far, we are set up near the Irving Street Library for Westminster during some mobile showers and laundry. And a lot of those folks, I don't know that they've actually seen anyone test positive that was experiencing homelessness or not that openly stated that. They are now asking that question ahead of time to make sure we can follow up with resources. But at that site, we haven't had to transport anybody to a respite center while those were open. And we are finding a lot of folks do tend to prefer to stay in their encampment or shelter on the trail. That's just where they're most comfortable. And that's also okay. And so we do guide them on how to safely quarantine in place. And then we're trying to improve some of the resources too that are being provided on site for folks so that they can, there are basic information around isolation, quarantine, home care. In this case, we kind of guide them around if you obviously are staying in a tent or on a trail or an encampment, how to sort of isolate yourself from other folks that are in that space, if there is anybody else there. And then also providing other resources through Adams County that they have available. And then we'll have the human services person on site too to help with food or other supports that that individual might need. And so that would, again, be consistent at this site. And I think Jessica is helping to pull together some great resources that can also support Northglenn residents specifically, or folks that are sheltering in Northglenn.
And I'll also add that with Jessica too on our staff, she'll be able to provide them with her direct contact information too for follow-up and things like that.
So that goes for person experiencing homelessness who doesn't test positive. There are some resources or some, like we were talking about, this soft handoff, or before that this might be another way to help someone out.
Yes, exactly. And I know that on site too, there is information that will be available on, okay, so you did not test positive now, but in case you do start experiencing symptoms, here are things that you can do.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Malika?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you guys. In your past experience with the other clinics, how have you guys handled folks who need follow-up care but don't have insurance? Either a primary care visit or, if not, then I guess they just go to the ED. I was just curious what your guys' experience with that.
With other sites, or the other 2 sites, what we've been doing is referring to Clinica or Salud, just depending on which they each have sort of their service areas. And so whichever one is appropriate for that particular area where they live or are staying at that time. And we do the refer out to one of those 2 organizations to get follow-up care. And in most cases, we're just referring to those anyways. And we have that collateral on a table too at the site for folks to take if they'd like it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Downing?
Thank you. I'm just kind of curious. I was looking at the different folks that are there on site, and you have human services from Adams County there. Not sure what department they are from, but as you mentioned, sometimes people react maybe negatively if they get a positive report. And I'm wondering, has there been any consideration about having someone like from Community Reach, from mental health, coming in and kind of walking or helping people through some of that anxiety, which I think if I received that report, I probably would have some type of reaction to that, so.
Yeah, that's actually a really great suggestion. And we can certainly reach out to our partners at Community Reach to see if they can help. And I know Jessica, just from her background in social work, she'll be somebody too that can help with all of that as well. But that's a great idea. So we can definitely reach out to Community Reach to see if they're willing to partner.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Brown.
Heather, I think that you've probably seen the same emails that I'm seeing about over at EB Rains. And the number one complaint that I've had is that the homeless have taken over the skate park and the playland for the kids and stuff like that. Have we stepped up our patrol to give them resources to go to? Or are we going to wait for this?
From my understanding, the police department, Officer Lund, and other officers who are on patrol have visited EB Rains Park in response when we get complaints, and officers are asked to, when they're on patrol, just check in and make sure that we make contact. And because we have Jessica on board, that connection is supposed to happen now. So as far as I know, Jessica, do you want to talk about some of the contacts that you're making so far? I think, have you been with us almost 3 weeks now?
Yep, just about like 3, almost 4, I think, on Wednesday. So I have had some meetings with Officer Lund. We have also formed a homeless task force. So we are putting together resources for patrol to bring out. So it's not just a simple engagement meeting, but it's actually going to be distributing some resources for people experiencing homelessness. It will have information on where to get help, or hopefully, but now it'll have the COVID testing site as well. And it will have some resources for food and that sort of thing. So we're just trying to consolidate our resource list so then it's not. One of the things that we've talked about with Officer Lund is that the interactions between patrol and homelessness is not always that qualitative, because there's a little bit of distrust there. And so we're working on kind of improving that trust so that when there is engagement with police officers, then they are looked at as more of a resource and not just someone that they want to leave right away.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a quick follow-up question based on the response that we just heard about putting together a list of resources for individuals experiencing homelessness. And I'm wondering if we're going to be providing access to bus passes or any other forms of transportation to help folks get from where they are to the resources, and how we're helping to facilitate, these individuals who may be experiencing homelessness in reaching out to the resource, getting connected to the resources. I think this is one of the things that we talked about at the homelessness task force, was just the need for a warm handoff. And if we're just simply providing folks with a list of resources, we're not actually helping them get connected to the resources. And so a lot of times what happens is we just move them along to the next place so that our residents don't have to see them in EB Rains Park. And so I'm just curious, what is that connection point, and what is the warm handoff? And if we don't have that established yet, what's the process that we're going through to ensure that we are able to provide that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have figured out some resources for transportation, but only for 55 and over. And that has to include food needs or medical needs. So that transportation piece is being figured out through the A-Lift program. And then I have not figured out other transportation. Majority of people experiencing homelessness, as I have asked around with Adams County, I've gone over to the Westminster outreach place with the mobile services, and with speaking with the with Officer Lund, they are usually people on the streets are usually using bikes as their main mode of transportation. So I am looking to see if that might be something that we can help do, is do like a bike care station, or have those around, if that would be accessible. As you know, my position is funded through CARES Act, and it's mostly regarding COVID. So trying to find out what needs have arisen in people experiencing homelessness and COVID, and tying that together to then also address those needs that I can be focusing on. One of the things that Officer Lund also was not aware of was the day work program that's being run through Bayou Enterprises. And so getting some more of that information, which then also provides transportation. So people who are experiencing homelessness can sign up with Bayou Enterprises. It's a day work program that they come pick them up at their encampments and bring them out to their work sites, and then also offer same day payment. So that has been something that our patrol officers have not known about. So hopefully that will connect them with work resources. So we're kind of whittling down the other resources. So showering and laundry is being provided at Westminster right now. So thinking about transportation has been something that we've talked about on how to get people over there. And when I've talked to people who are experiencing homelessness, they do tend to have like their main encampment area. And then like once a week, they will make treks across town in a way. So if we can get them even just like the list of days that services are being provided, then those treks that they are already planning, either by using their bikes or their bus passes that they have, they will be able to utilize those. And something also to keep in mind when I was talking to the people at the Westminster site is that many people who are experiencing homelessness do have jobs. They do have slight income availability to provide for bus passes as long as it is well planned out. So they can't use them, all the time. But if they are able to figure out a weekly schedule, then they can use those resources as well.
Councilmember Escobar. Oh.
Thank you, Mayor. No questions. I just wanted to welcome Jessica as one MSW to another MSW. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been great so far.
Megan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Jessica, I'll follow up with you. There's a great resource for those folks who do have Medicaid, which quite a few of our folks experiencing homelessness tend to have that, or Medicare, but Medicaid has a great transportation resource called non-emergency medical transportation. And that can get them to some, at least medical and behavioral health appointments, and then some other services, typically not like grocery shopping or whatever random trips they might need. But for those medical needs, it's a really good option.
Councilmember Malika?
Well, and I think I just wanted to add in on the transportation conversation, and whether these are people experiencing homelessness or just families who don't have a car. I think one thing that we could look at possibly as a city is possibly of having like rideshare type credits, if you will. So like if you need to do a follow-up appointment with a primary care provider that, we're going to refer to people. Clinica's not anywhere near Northglenn. So how are they going to get there? And how do we help them provide? How do we help provide the transportation they need to get to that follow-up appointment or something like that? So I know that that's something that Smart Commute did that was really successful.
Councilmember Brown.
First of all, I'd like to thank Councilmember Goff for bringing the subject up. Is there any opportunity to provide, when we're doing the counts every year, how they can come in, they can get a fresh meal, they can get a shower? Is there anything that we could do with additional CARES money in that kind of arrangement? Because it'd be really super cool if we could.
So I am exploring what it would look like to bring in additional services to the city of Northglenn, different locations. I know that through the task force, we have heard that there are certain churches around town that have dedicated space and energy possibly to helping out with locations. So just exploring what those services would look like. I would love to see case management come in and be a part of that, but I don't know how that plays into COVID and what resources are available, but I am exploring that.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah.
And just for the rest of council to know, we did, our homelessness community task force did finally meet on Tuesday of last week. And that was done virtually, of course, but we had about 25 people participate, which was a great showing. And it was a great first step too in getting a lot of the nonprofit organizations together to really address what the needs are here in Northglenn to first figure that out. And then once they dive into their work a little bit more, to provide those recommendations back to council. So you will be hearing more about what we're trying to do here in Northglenn as well.
Sounds great. Any other questions from council tonight? Well, I want to thank Megan and Rupa and Jessica, all three of you, for your work on this project. It is a very big deal, and we appreciate what you're doing for our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 3, private activity bond assignment. So thank goodness Brooke is here to explain this. Do you have a presentation for us, or are you just talking?
This is actually, it should be a fairly quick conversation. Every year the city gets assigned private activity bonds through Department of Local Affairs, in which we can use for those eligible projects that are identified in the staff memo. In years past, we have assigned that to CHAFA, who has put money back into the community with those funds primarily for first-time mortgage homeowners, home buyers. So last year it was brought up about exploring the possibility of perhaps allocating our funds to the Adams County Housing Authority, which is now Maker Housing Partners. And so we did not get necessarily clear consensus on whether to do that last year. As much as it was asked for us to pursue that, we did. And so the memo basically is asking a question as to where would the city council like to appropriate or allocate the PAB funds this year. I would also mention that if we do nothing, which the deadline here is in September, mid-September, it goes back to Department of Local Affairs and then they reallocate it. So that's a third option. We're not recommending that, but wanted to have council weigh in and provide some consensus on which direction they'd like to see us go.
Okay, do we have comments or questions from council? I agree, number 3 is not an option. Councilmember Brown.
Brooke. Oh my God, I think I just had a brain fart. Could we split the money?
That is another option you could do as well.
And how much money are we talking about?
$2 million total and change.
So we could give it to both organizations. Would it be still useful to do that?
One thing I would mention is that neither organization directly reached out to us for this allocation. And so one has been a practice and the other was a request made to explore if they had anything. So yes, we could easily split it.
And from both organizations, it would go to Northglenn. So people buying houses in Northglenn, or is there no guarantee?
No, for CHAFA, they primarily, if you, in the attachment number 1, that's in the packet, it shows how much money CHAFA through the PAB allocations has allocated to the city. It far exceeds our annual allocation. So they've over-serviced our community by a large amount. With respect to Maker does not have any projects in Northglenn. They are in Thornton and unincorporated Adams County. I believe part of the conversation last year was circling around, regional partnerships and working with other folks trying to provide affordable and accessible housing in the region.
I think that's a very important point, Brooke. Thank you for sharing.
Any other comments from council? Councilmember Peterson?
Thanks very much, Mayor. Based on that answer, I'm inclined to give the lion's share to CHAFA. Sort of Northglenn, more bang for the buck, it seems. More local funds.
Councilmember Downing?
My preference would be whichever organization that benefited Northglenn most. And I do appreciate you researching, the different avenues that we might go through, but I really want to put everything where it would benefit Northglenn the most. So.
So I think Brooke is looking for direction from council. So if we don't, Like, would it be helpful to have a proposal and then people can jump in? Do you have more questions? I see two hands, Councilmember Brown and then Councilmember Whitkovich.
Hello, considering that my first home loan was part of the CHAFA plan when I moved here a very long time ago, I would like to see the money go to CHAFA if that's where we can count on more of a bang in the city of Northglenn. I appreciate Adams County and the other choices, but I think we need to focus on our people. And I know that they can't just say Northglenn only, but we will get better bang for our bucks if it's with CHAFA.
Councilmember Whitkovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to throw in my support for giving the money to CHAFA. Makes sense considering what they've done in Northglenn, and I would be all for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I just was hoping that someone here would give the reasoning behind suggesting the maker housing partners in this regional cooperation or regional effort. I mean, like why, I mean, what would be the benefit is there a benefit in the long run? Have we received benefit from outside agency or outside whatever municipalities? Like, just like, why is this even an option? So if someone could just kind of speak to that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Brooke, is that something you can answer?
I think part of the conversation was that in supporting them in their current efforts, is that if there was a program or a project that became eligible down the road in Northglenn, that there would just be one of those opportunities where we might be able to leverage that past history of partnership to ensure the success of a potential future project in Northglenn. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but that was sort of the takeaway that I had from the conversation we had a year ago.
Well, I do feel like it would be a wonderful thing if we could, use money, some kind of money, this money next year, or some other fund to do more affordable housing here in Northglenn. So, I mean, I guess I would not be opposed to splitting the money in some way, but I guess I don't feel real strongly either way. Maybe next year would be a better time to delve a little further into what other options there might be.
And yeah, and once again, we get this allocation every year. So, so far I hear a few folks going in the direction of CHAFA, a few kind of maybe split. So that's kind of my count right now is we've got some let's split it, and we've got some that are CHAFA.
Awesome. Councilmember Escobar.
Thank you, Mayor. Brooke, you can count me in for what do you call it? NAFTA?
CHAFA.
DAFTA.
CHAFA.
DAPA. even with the headsets, the D's and the G's and the C's, they all sound alike.
Yep.
But yeah, count me in.
CHAFA. Great. Councilmember Mullica, Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to weigh in tonight?
Sure. Yeah, I support the CHAFA decision. I think that's a great place for now. I do agree with Councilmember Goff. I would like to see some different options for next year for the allocation.
I also agree. I'm on board for CHAFA and just hope that we can explore some additional options for next year.
So let me just chat very briefly about options. Is that generally what we do is that most folks that work in the nonprofit arena that are looking for affordable housing, like the Reserve Apartments, the additions that they did a few years back, they explored that possibility. We've had a couple of other apartment investors who work in the nonprofit realm who have also reached out to us in the past for doing PABs. And so we always have those conversations with those folks. But a lot of times what ends up happening is they can't pull their financing together in a timely enough manner for us to be able to work through those assignments. I do believe it was not last year, it was the year before last. We did a CHAFA deal. We did a deal with CHAFA to assign our PAB allocation. I believe it might have been to the reserve, or it might have been to another apartment complex like the reserve that was doing a major upgrade to their facility. So we don't normally go out and actively try to solicit folks because it's sort of a niche market when it comes to the folks that actually can utilize these resources. And so we've had probably in the almost 9 years I've been here, I think we've probably had like 4 or 5 folks come knocking and making requests. And we've only really had one that has actually been able to come through. So I just want to mention as like, from my standpoint, it's hard to find those folks because we don't know where they are or if they're investing in any of the commercial or real estate areas within the community.
Thank you. I also support the CHAFA decision. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm curious as to if this kind of funding could be used for some kind of homeless shelter or homeless, like a tiny village or some kind of, something that some of these churches or the people that are on the homelessness task force might be able to reach out or find those nonprofit organizations that you're talking about. I mean, is it allocated like in some kind of specific way that would disallow building some kind of homeless housing?
So that's a great question, and I'd have to reach out to DOLA to get a good answer on that because I don't know the answer. But generally speaking, it's usually what it is. It's federal qualified projects for rental properties that are either for acquisition or rehab that qualify. And so I'd have to add, I can get back to get you a formal answer, but generally speaking, what we're doing is low to moderate income housing is the way it works. And the other thing that's sort of changed over the landscape with affordable housing type projects is a lot of them are now doing vouchers as opposed to like traditional, what I used to remember in my earlier years as Section 8 housing. That's really sort of a thing of the past and now. And so what you see is what we're seeing now where you'll have low to mod voucher systems where people can actually get subsidized rental rates in individual apartment buildings, but not the entire facility is low mod income. So interesting way it's kind of changed over the years, and it's a lot more having to do with the tax benefits for the property owner. But I'll get an answer. I'll get a better answer for you on that if that is something. We could definitely explore that in the future as well.
All right. Well, thank you. I will support the CHAFA for this year. I don't want to like throw a monkey wrench into the works.
So I think we have almost everybody on the CHAFA leaning side.
You do, bro.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right.
Any other final thoughts for Brooke? All right. Well, thank you for being here. So the last item for tonight, Adams County Minor Home Repair Program and CDBG funding. So we have Sarah Dusenberry, Senior Planner. Did I say your last name correctly? Thank you. Senior Planner. She will introduce our item. I do have a presentation to project. Sarah, thank you for being here. Looks like you have members of another team. Feel free to introduce them when you are ready.
Right, so just to kind of give some background on why we're bringing this forward. So in 2018, the city utilized CDBG funds for the implementation of the Connect Northglenn Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, primarily in our low to moderate income census tracts, since we were using CDBG funds. Public Works and Planning Department worked in tandem on this to make sure that it lined up with the established residential streets program. This has proven in the last year or two harder because extensive design is required for Connect Northglenn, so those two programs aren't quite lining up. So we decided to check with Adams County on the various kind of options we may have moving forward. We checked initially on doing the design work for Connect Northglenn so that those projects were ready to go when they came up in the residential streets program. This is not an eligible activity under CDBG funds. So we looked next at the pedestrian improvements around 112th Street inline station, but those were also determined ineligible because the area does not have a majority concentration within the census tract. So Adams County staff suggested we shift our funds to the minor home repair program. I'm not going to go into an overview yet on that because we do have the presentation from Adams County staff. But looking at the program, really think it supports the home repair service action item within the strategic plan by providing funding for residents to make repairs to their homes that improve health and safety of their living situation. Additionally, we also think that it will help improve homeownership, as homeownership is a requirement of residents that take part in the program. And also looking at Northglenn, we have about 1,400 households right now that are paying over 30% of their monthly income on housing costs, and that doesn't include repairs. So for many residents, it's not financially feasible to make these repairs. So we overall kind of think that program, the minor home repair program, really fits in with the home repair service action item, primarily by providing those funds and also helping to stabilize living situations for some residents that may be in a bit of a limbo with the home. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Adams County staff to kind of give that presentation. And I believe we have Rick Reed, Barbara Baca, and Melissa Sherry to help do the presentation and answer some questions that y'all may have.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Melissa Sherry. I'm the Community Development Manager for the Community Development Division at Adams County. I have my team here today to really give the rundown of the program. They're the experts here, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have. With that, I'd like to pass it along to the team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Barb Baca. I am a Community Development Coordinator with Adams County Community Development. And Rick?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Reed. I am the Senior Community Development Coordinator for Adams County. I'm here to talk with you about the Minor Home Repair Program. And I'd like to encourage you to consider having Northglenn join the program to help some low-income households in your city. So let's get going. Next slide, please. All right. So this is just a brief mission statement for the program. This was developed during the 2015 to 2019 consolidated plan. And it uses this exact language in the consolidated plan, that Adams County has a priority objective of working through the minor home repair program and with community development block grant urban county jurisdictions, which does include the city of Northglenn, to ensure that aging housing stock occupied by low to moderate income owners is rehabilitated and repaired. So basically what we're saying is we would like to keep people who are in their homes for good. And this is one of the programs that we use to do that. So let's move on to the next real quick. So quick, brief overview of this. This program's been around about 25 years, 26. Like Sarah said, it addresses decent, safe, sanitary repairs for eligible households. It's funded with CDBG funding, so that Community Development Block Grant. It carries a lot of federal regulations. We receive it annually from the U.S. or from HUD, obviously. The cost of the program, we have up to $24,990 per household, dependent on need. So dependent on need means that it has to be a qualified need. And actually, we're going to go into that a little bit more here in a couple slides. We are currently, I don't want to skip past these. These are very important. We actually just recently changed one of the policies in the program because of some guidance from HUD. So there is an exception for mobile homes. We actually used to not allow them in our program if they were built before June 15th, 1976. There's some HUD regulations around that were it's pretty standard across programs. We discovered that potentially it doesn't have to be, so we amended our program accordingly. So now homes built before that can now receive up to $5,000 worth of repair, and that's really for those kind of necessary emergency repairs that we see sometimes. In the program year 2019, which is July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of this year, we had helped a number of homes. The average assistance was $12,995 per home. So you see, we put some investment into these homes to keep people, in safe sanitary conditions. Currently, we are serving the unincorporated areas, but we are also working in Federal Heights, Brighton, and hopefully Northglenn, but I won't push you too hard. Okay, I can go to the next. All right, so to qualify for this program, eligible households must be living in one of the participating jurisdictions. They must be at or below 80% AMI. So for a family of 4, as an example, and this of course is updated annually, the amount is $78,500 or less for that household. So Adams County is getting more and more expensive. HUD as a whole recognizes that. They are increasing the amounts every year. I have yet to see it stabilize because people are earning more. It's getting harder for people who are low income, and therefore the limit keeps getting raised. So you must own the home, and it must be your primary residence. You must be current on all taxes, property, state, federal taxes. We check all that during the application process. And assistance can be provided only once during a 5-year period, unless the applicant is less than 50% AMI and the requested repair is deemed an urgent repair. The only other caveat to that would be that we can't go above that $24,999 level, even in that 5-year period. Okay, let's keep going. So here are some of these eligible repairs. And we do all of these a lot. So eligible repairs include roof replacements, gutters and downspouts, hot water heaters. We do air conditioning. We will do furnaces. Accessibility improvements is a huge one. We have remodeled several bathrooms to allow people to get in and out of their tub, because sometimes it gets very difficult. We do windows for the sake of energy efficiency. Usually we won't do windows unless there is a broken window, some real reason for it kind of emerging. But we do see windows sometimes, as well as doors. And some other, there are lots of little things that pop up, electrical outlets that don't work. Again, decent, safe sanitary conditions. Ineligible repairs. This is a minor home repair program, so we don't do major structural deficiencies. So we don't do foundation work. We're not really in the weeds of doing sewer replacement, sewer line replacement, because those things can be prohibitively expensive, and also it just falls outside of the building envelope. So it's one of those things that's a little more difficult to do. But we also can't do cosmetic repairs, and I'd like to point out that also means things that are maintenance, like we're not doing painting, we're not doing tree trimming, we're not doing yard work. There are other organizations who can do that. We want to actually help people and be, judicious, protectors of this funding by, doing the projects that are really the most impactful. So again, those hot water heaters, those furnaces, air conditioning during the summer, that kind of stuff. We have to make sure that repairs are on permitted structures. So we generally don't do accessory buildings unless it is connected to the home in some way, and that's kind of going into the weeds. We can skip a little bit by that. We also don't do appliances. However, we will make the exception for stoves. That is a HUD requirement that, or not even a requirement, it's just allowed by HUD that we can replace stoves because they're an integral part of the kitchen. So sometimes we'll do that. I can go to the next slide. All right. So pandemic limitations. Right now we are obviously in the middle of a bit of a health crisis. So we have made some modifications, some temporary modifications to the program to limit the list of eligible interior repairs. And what we're trying to do is actually phase these repairs. So if we identify something, we will kind of put it on a list and we will phase this approach so we can take care of all of the repairs as time goes by. But right now we're mostly only doing emergency interior repairs, such as failed water heaters, failed furnaces, urgent accessibility upgrades for people who are, they're spending a lot of time in their home and they need to have access to all of their things. Exterior repairs, still doing all of that because less opportunity to, I guess, have that kind of cross contact between the contractor, us, and the homeowner. All right, next slide. All right, perfect. So the process. So it's actually a pretty easy process. Residents, they complete an application, they submit it to us. The application can be put in through an online portal that we have called Neighborly. There's links to that through the Minor Home Repair website. We also have a fair number of older applicants who don't use computers as much. So we do a lot of paper applications as well. And then we still process it using the same online portal so that, if they ever wanted access to it, they could still get that. But yeah, we will work with them however we can to get them through the application process. Including a lot of hand-holding during that process, not literal hand-holding. We don't do that right now, pandemic. But we will walk with people through things. Once approved, we will schedule an on-site walkthrough, which means that we will go out with the contractors that we have procured for this program. And we will do a walkthrough on the property to look for those eligible repairs. Sometimes there are repairs that are requested that are not eligible when we see them. Sometimes there are repairs that are eligible that they didn't request, but they definitely need. We've replaced a couple roofs before because the roofs were obviously really bad and the people just didn't know that that was something we did. So, we'll be very, we've always been very thorough on our walkthroughs. The scope of work is obviously set based on need. So that is when we are giving the scope of work to both the contractor and the homeowner who's going to agree, yes, this looks right. Then the contractor then has 30 days to finish it. Sometimes, obviously right now, it's a little difficult to do that. So some extensions can be made, but we try and get these repairs done as fast as possible. We will also require a HUD 24 CFR Part 58 environmental review. We take care of that in-house. The contractors obviously are competitively bidding for these programs or for each active project. We select the most reasonable bid. So even if a contractor doesn't address all of the issues in the scope of work to our satisfaction, we may go with one that is slightly higher, or we have to be reasonable. We have to document all of this for HUD. So we sometimes make those kind of decisions, and we have to document all of that. Typically, construction is completed within 45 days of award, and that is correct. We push for 30. typically about 45 days because they're ordering things and making sure schedules. And then we pay the contractor directly. So there's not a lot of transactions going on. And again, we make sure we're keeping all of this documentation. And as a participating city in our urban county, you would be able to access all of this information. So I am actually going to pass it off to Barb, who's going to give you some success stories, some examples of the projects that we do and the impact that we cause.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to give you a few numbers and then I'm going to show you a few slides of before and after pictures. Some of the projects we've done. Between August of 2019 and August of this year, we have completed about 31 projects. Some of the breakdowns here are the 4 elderly households with ADA walk-in showers, as Rick mentioned before, households with the ADA handrails to help them get up and down the stairs, 6 households with failing roof replacements, 9 of the households with energy efficient windows for weatherization purposes, 5 households with the furnace replacement, and 3 households with carbon monoxide smoke detectors, because we know it is a law that they need those in the home. And of course, that is our priority to get those taken care of. Next slide, please. So this is a walk-in shower that we have done for an elderly household. They needed help getting in and out of the tub. So the contractor went in and took the tub out and put a walk-in shower for the individual and also put some handrails in there so they can, take a shower and not worry about having to slip on anything, and they have something to hold on to. Next slide. This one here, household had a door that the water was coming through it, and we put some stairs there, and of course replaced the door so the water would stop coming in, and of course the draft of the cold air would stop, or the heat. So that's another one. Next, please. This one here, the family was having to carry the mother who was disabled up and down the stairs of the home. So Adams County, the contractors went ahead and put this rail here to help the household. They didn't have to carry the mother up and down the stairs anymore. So the mother was able to be wheeled in with her wheelchair. So that was a great story there. Next, please. And last, we have a roof repair. So this is a failed roof that we went through and did a repair on. So you just see the before picture where they're ripping everything out, and then the after picture when they're putting everything on there. So those are a few of the pictures that we have done. Thank you. Go ahead, Melissa.
All right, thank you guys. So assuming that Northglenn City Council approves to move forward with funding the program, a resolution would be required indicating that the participation is approved. Northglenn and Adams County would enter into an MOU laying out all those expectations of the parties. So basically that MOU would look like what we went through today. Adams County is really doing the bulk of the work, and we would just ask that Northglenn advertise the program to get the word out to the residents. We do hold a 10% administration fee out of the program budget. And what that does is basically pay for Barb's salary. So that helps retain staff, get our subject matter experts really here and employed for the program. But any unused administration would be rolled into the program budget to serve more households. So it's pretty typical that we get towards the end of the project and we have about, we have say $5,000 left in the program budget. We know we could do one house with that. Whatever administration is left over, we'll roll it in and try to get the most out for our residents. This would require a 30-day public comment period through the Adams County Annual Action Plan. So what we would do is do an amendment to our HUD Adams County Action Plan to allow for the funding to be included, open up the 30-day public comment period, with the final approval being done by the Adams County Board of County Commissioners and submitting that plan to HUD for review and acceptance. We would then move forward with the environmental review clearances. This, getting in the weeds, it's a 2-tier process, but it takes a bit of time to finish those. So we would try to work on those simultaneously with the 30-day public comment period. After the environmental review clearances are done, we will be able to open up the program to Northglenn households if the MOU is executed. With that, next slide, please. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them for you. And the very last slide in your packet you'll see is the HUD income levels. It's a little difficult to read, but we wanted that there for your reference to see what a low-income household looks like in today's world. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we had Councilmember Peterson with a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, my question's changed, but the question I have is, could you address, Melissa, the concept of administration again, and the 10% administrative cost? What does that amount to in a dollar amount, and is that strictly from Adams County, or is that administrative costs shared or borne by Northglenn?
Sure. Yes, I can definitely address that. So the number figure is actually outlined in your packet, which I do not have open and handy right in front of me. But what we would do is take that out of the CDBG allocation that Northglenn receives on an annual basis. It's called activity delivery costs in the HUD world. So we take that out of the program budget itself, make it 2 separate activities essentially, or 2 separate projects. And then we bill for time actually served on the program. So what my staff does every month is have a timesheet hour by hour being spent on each program individually, and their time is tracked and then billed on a monthly basis. We used to actually take 20% administration for the minor home repair program and found that that was just too much. So we lowered it down to 10. I would, just throwing some numbers out there, I'm assuming that it'll be more along the lines of about 8%. But really what that does for us is have staff, because we don't have enough CDBG administration to cover all of our staffing costs. I have a very small team. It's myself and 3 other people, and you've got 2 of them here today. So it really helps us run the program efficiently and correctly or compliant with the HUD regulations.
Thank you. And as you said, that's just taken from what would be allocated from the grant. So there's nothing taken from the Northglenn budget directly.
Correct.
Okay. Based on everything you've said, this sounds like a really fantastic program and serving a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So thank you very much for being here and addressing that question.
So it looks like Brooke had his hand up. I see your little blue hand as well. Well done. If you'd like to add something.
Sure. I just want to tee up a few things here and have Sarah kind of help with our side of the conversation here on the presentation from the ADCO staff. And I want to thank them for being here tonight to help share this. I believe there are only 2 council members still on council that may remember that Northglenn once participated in this program and actually stopped participating in this program and pivoted to using Connect Northglenn as actually it was originally curbs and sidewalks, and then we did Connect Northglenn. I will tell you that the old program had a lot of frustration associated with it, and a lot of the stuff that they are now doing under this 10% fee, we were doing ourselves. And I will tell you, it is not an easy task to qualify people. I will also say that over the years since we did drop out, the refinement of the programming and the responsiveness and the performance of the contractors has dramatically improved. And I want to mention that because I know 2 of our council members probably remember the long stories and frustrations that we had over the old program. And I just want to assure those council members and the new council members that this is a different chapter, a different era with this program, and part of the reasons why I brought this back. Sarah mentioned earlier about this meeting our strategic goals for the city council. One other thing I want Sarah to expand on a little bit, and maybe creeping in some of the back of your minds is, well, Brooke, you guys were spending all this money on Connect Northglenn. What's going on with Connect Northglenn, man? Don't give up on it. We haven't. Actually, I want Sarah to say this because she's been working on this with Kyle in Public Works. about some of the other things that we're doing strategically to keep Connect Northglenn going so that we can add that to this conversation. And then after that, I would like Sarah to then talk a little bit about some of the logistics of decisions that we would want feedback from council on if you decide to move forward with this.
Yeah, so we are moving forward and have applied for a Safer Streets grant with CDOT and looking at adding bike lanes, parking lanes, center line striping, as well as share lane markings to a variety of the streets within the Connect Northglenn plan, looking at streets like Leroy Drive, Truda, 119th, Wyco Trail. We're also looking at putting in an RRFB crossing, which is ones where you kind of press the button and it starts flashing for people to walk across the street. So we're definitely moving forward with that. We applied on Friday, and we will hear back from that hopefully here in the next few weeks.
And Sarah, for what amount?
Oh, 700,000.
So I think it's important to mention that because we're basically talking about 3.5 years worth of funding allocation that we otherwise were doing through CDBG, that we might actually be able to do that in one step. One other thing I also wanted to mention is that Public Works with their residential street repair program have actually retained an engineering firm to do templates for the striping for Connect Northglenn, so that it's more ready-made, that when we do residential street programming over Connect Northglenn overlays, that they will have design templates so that we won't have to do this back and forth bidding issue and design for those projects, and will be more seamless in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Escobar, did you have a question or comment?
Well, I did have excuse me, I did have a question for Heather, but then I think Brooke stole the answer, but I'll share it anyway. About the time that you came on, Heather, and as city manager, we had a request for a resident on Belford who needed a ramp to get her husband in and out of the house. And at that time, if I remember correctly, no one could help because we had withdrawn from the program. And then I don't think we participated last year either. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so this has been an ongoing discussion that Brooke and I have had, and the topic, I can't remember who on council elevated it during the strategic planning process, but we have seen a need. And certainly I will say this program addresses very specific needs. It's not going to address everyone's needs. So I know last fall, not to get too far off topic, we did have a request by a resident to assist with moving services. So I think in the back of my mind, that's still something that I would like to find more of a solution for, but I don't have that answer today. But this program, going back to the example that you gave, Councilmember Escobar, right after I started, I think we had to get really creative in finding a resource to assist that resident. And I can't remember if we found that through my brother's redevelopment. Jenny Murphy worked really hard to find a resource to make that accessibility repair happen. So joining this minor home repair program would be, in my mind, an asset to the city, because we'd be able to naturally transition and connect our residents who qualify with this program.
And what is our partnership dollar amount? What is it that we would be getting if we didn't participate? Do we get our own CDGB or?
So to answer that question, we typically get around $220,000 to $240,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And so 10% of that would go to the administration, with the remaining balance of around $200,000 to $215,000 would go toward grant programming. And I think that's one of the things that's a great segue into it, because one of the things I was going to have Sarah talk about is how big of grants do we want to entertain if we do this? Because we do only have 200,000, and under the regular Adams County program, it's up to 25,000. But if we did 25,000, we would run out of homes real quick. Also, in the past, it's been first come, first serve. We haven't necessarily looked at, it's based on the need and qualifications of who come in, and then figuring out, do we have enough resources to share? So I wanted to just put that out there as well.
Okay, I guess I'm always thinking with my 1960 brain. I could do a lot with $250,000 in terms of serving the residents of Northglenn. But maybe $250,000 doesn't go very far today. I guess I stand on the principle that if we're getting our money's worth, I'm in favor of it. But I mean, when a senior citizen, retired, can't get their husband or wife in and out of the house, and we weren't able to get anyone to help us. And if I remember correctly, that ramp was never put in, but I might have to drive by there and see. It is just a shame that we had to go through that to begin with. So I don't know how I feel or where I stand right now. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like Melissa has something to add. I see your hand.
My tiny blue hand. I figured out how to raise my hand. I just want to throw out there that if we do get calls from residents that need help that aren't necessarily within this program, we do have resources for them and try to lead them in the right direction as well. And that doesn't have anything to do with administration or anything like that. It's just, we're just here to help, and we want to make sure that people, regardless of where they live at, are served and are connected with the right resources.
Okay, I guess what I was saying, that wasn't the case, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we struggled a lot trying to get somebody to help. So if it's a different program and if your assurance that we could get services for someone like that family, then I would be more in favor of it.
Councilmember Brown and then Goff.
Sorry, I'm just curious, would our money only be used for our residents?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And then you're gonna look at us to determine a limit of how much we should allow.
What I wanted to do was to give Sarah an opportunity to talk about that and basically try to establish some ranges that how historically it used to be $7,000 was where we left it last time.
I think so, something like that. I can't remember. I think my concern is that I don't want to lowball it, like, basically our first jump out the gate of the COVID money to the restaurants and things like that. However we gave that, small businesses, right? Is there, you know what? I need to sleep. I lost my thought again. There it goes. I'll let Sarah speak to it, and hopefully it'll re-trigger my memory.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I was just looking at the slide here that says in 2019, the average assistance for each person applying for this through Adams County was $12,995. Well, I just kind of made it 12,000 because that made things work a little easier. If we gave the whole $250,000, that would be about 20 households, if I did my math right. So, to me, this sounds like a good program. I would say we should give the full amount. And, I don't think I would want to make the upper limit be much less than what the average was last year. I mean, that's what people need. I mean, costs only go up. So, that's what I would support. That's my way of looking at it. Thank you.
Councilmember Brown, did you raise your hand again or no? No. Okay, sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I definitely support this program and the partnership, excuse me, that's being proposed this evening. I think, it really, in my mind, is a way of helping some of our seniors age in place. Additionally, it's a homelessness prevention program as well. So I totally support it. And I also echo Councilmember Goff's sentiment that we shouldn't be lowballing this, as in so much as we're able to, provide the general average that was hit last year with the program. I think we should be doing that. And I don't know if there's the opportunity, like if somebody needs a new roof, to be able to, I don't know, look at where the funding is for the rest of the year and have some flexibility in making that decision. Because I know that roofs are not cheap at all, and I would hate for someone to be displaced because they qualify for the program, but we can't provide enough funding. That's all. Thank you.
Brooke, did you want to add to that or respond in some way?
So, and I'll defer to Melissa in case I misspeak here, but generally what we try to do is to set a max grant amount of, if it's 12,000, that's fine. What generally happens is that almost every home that we go into needs more than the amount of money that we have available. And so what sometimes will end up happening is, or we discover that we put a grab rail in a bathroom and the whole floor is damaged, it's rotted. And so those type of situations happen. And so part of the idea is that when setting the amount is that the staff typically understands that what may end up happening is they may go over that amount in specific cases, but try to keep that amount to the extent that we can. And ultimately, when you get to the end of the applications, someone who may be on the list may go to a wait list because of circumstances like this. And so that's part of what we also just wanted to make council aware of, is that this is sort of one of those things where unknown contingencies can affect down the line potential recipients. And Melissa, if I'm missing anything here, please jump in, I think, and help clarify.
No, that's a great rundown. I would say it's a little bit more on the rare side where we walk into a house and we hit that high 24,999. If you're at all wondering why that's the magic number, it's due to lead-based paint rules. So if we were to go into a home, do construction on a house that had lead-based paint, we would have to abate the entire house. So keeping under that level is very important. However, we do have to do lead-based paint mitigation regardless of, if it's there or not. So yeah, I think Brooke had a great synopsis of what we kind of look at. But from our perspective, we go into the homes and we do look for those decent, safe, sanitary items as part of the walkthrough with our contractors, and things come up. So having that buffer is very helpful.
And that's one of the things I wanted to clarify with, is that the Adams County CDBG program goes up to 24,000 or 25,000. And I'm suggesting, because of our limited amount of CDBG funds, is that we potentially look at setting a lower limit to what Councilmember Goff was referring to as the average, just because it helps us spread the amount of opportunity and because we will be oversourced with need when we roll this out, just so you guys know.
Any other comments for Brooke? I heard some support for it. I think it's a great program. I appreciate the presentation. The examples were great. I think it meets a need in our city at this time. And so I think it's a wonderful idea. Councilmember Brown?
I absolutely do agree with you. I just would like to see the dollar amount capped, like Catherine said, at $12,000. Because I don't think we can't go up to $24,999 on each house, I think the average is a good place to start.
Would that be the general consensus of council for us to, when we sit down and discuss this with the ADCO staff to start with?
Can I ask a question about the need, or how many? and maybe you've already answered this, I'm just wondering how many requests, because I went back to our business grants and how, we were just giving it to everybody because there wasn't more need than money. I'm assuming that when word gets out, there will be considerable need. I just worry about the cost. So I worry about capping it at 12,000. I know home repairs cost a ton of money. And so I think that's too low. So I worry about that they wouldn't be able to get a project completed at that amount.
So I think there's two answers to that question. Is that when we were administering the program, we would average about 80 requests for the $7,000 grant, and typically I think we averaged between 35 to 55 recipients a year, because some projects was a grab rail, others may have been a new roof. So it really depended on that. And I think that's one of the challenges for Northglenn that we've had historically, is that we've always had more people who've had need. Now, one of the things that the ADCO staff can also do is they can go in and prioritize the needs. So someone says, they want a new roof and they need a new water heater. So the question is we not have enough to do both. So part of that could be through prioritization. It's not a really good example. I'm sure Rick and Barb could do a better job of that. But that's one of the things that we also try to do is prioritize, because as I said, under the limitations of our old program, we could easily have spent on a majority of the homes well over $20,000 and still not have truly fixed everything. But we did the best that we could with the most essential things. And I think that's one of the big things that Rick was referring to earlier, is trying to keep these people in their homes for as long as possible so that they can enjoy that quality of life. And so that's why when you see the list of what's eligible and prioritized, those are a combination of those two things.
Did you say there was, I could be merging the presentations tonight. Is there a limit per time period? So if a resident, said, I need a water heater, and then was able to reapply for the second item, is there a problem there?
So we serve residents for a 5-year period. So what we do is we keep track of the residents. So if they apply once, we'll serve them again in the future 5 years. However, the caveat to this is if they hit a certain AMI, which is 50% area median income, which Barb or Rick, if you could pull a number out for a 4-person household of what 50% AMI is, that'd be very helpful. But if they hit that income category, so mostly the elderly residents or folks that aren't working, then we will serve them again, as long as it is an emergency repair.
Right.
That number is $50,000 exactly.
For a 4-person household, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
And I would just mention that under the old program, it was not clear that anyone would otherwise be eligible again in the early phases of the program. So if you got a $3,500 grant from Northglenn through CDBG, you couldn't apply again. And this is one of the things that's really helped improve this program, is that they've set timeframes to make sure that we're being equitable, as well as identifying and respecting need.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've recently done a lot of bids for a roof and it goes way over 12,000. So I think that's the piece that I'm worried about. I know there's a ton of necessary repairs and emergent repairs that are less than that, but there are some big ticket items that we would then not be able to help with if we capped it at the average. So that's the only thing I'm worried about. Councilmember Brown.
I'm curious what the median income is for 2 people in the house, because most of our elderly, if they're lucky enough, their kids have moved on. So they're down to just mom and pop living in the house. So I'm wondering what the income requirement would be for that, like 25,000?
I can actually answer that question if I'm allowed to jump in.
No, of course.
So for a 2-person household right now, the 2020 income limits are $62,800 or less.
Okay. So they can I worry about them on Social Security and things like that. So they would still, most of them would still qualify even with a pension thrown in there. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Downing.
Maybe Brooke can speak to this from the past, but if I recall correctly, it seemed that a lot of the requests were more for water heaters or ramps, things like that. There would be an occasional large item, but I don't believe that that's the norm. I don't think it's the norm. So
that is correct. I think where most of it was water heaters, furnaces, boilers, and we did have the occasional roofs, but keep in mind that, roofs have definitely jumped up in price a lot over the last 4 or 5 years because of all these hailstorms. But you're correct, Commissioner or Councilmember Downing. Very much so. That was the case, and I think a lot of that may also have been is because when we promoted this, we did identify that it was a cap of one. For a couple of years, it was 3,500, and then another 2 years, it was 7,000. So I think people tailored their requests based on what they thought the needs that they could get funded for. So I think that's another factor in that.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to kind of get a clarification because I think at this point now I'm a little confused. The very end of your presentation of all those slides, you have the income limit summary for 2020. And that's where you can see what low income is for a household of 1 through 8. But my question is, you've got 3 categories: very low income, extremely low income, and low income. Would all of those low income people qualify for this program? Okay, that's all I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, so I heard support. Brooke, what would you like to wrap up?
It sounds like we have consensus to move forward. I think we had the number 12,000 thrown out a couple of times. I think we can start with that as a starting point unless there's any other feedback from council on that. And our goal would be is to come back as was outlined in the presentation with a resolution and an MOU, and we will be working with the ADCO staff if everybody sort of seems to be in agreement with that.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Thank you to Rick and Barb and Melissa and Sarah and Brooke. Great presentation tonight.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was our final item for study session. Is there any other item or information for council tonight?
Nothing else, Mayor.
Okay, well, then I bid you a good night. We are adjourned.